Usually I choose Welsh lyrics that I like the sound of, actually, more than the actual content. Whereas I feel like English, for me, the narrative is more important. Whereas with Welsh, I go with the feeling of how it sounds. Hey KLAT, I'm Talulah, and this is my Get to Know Me. For a long time, I was like experimenting with a lot of the different musical influences that I have from my upbringing. So I grew up singing Welsh hymns mainly, to be honest, with the with the choir at school. And this basically made me fall in love with melody. I think at the root of all my music is a strong impulse to create beautiful melodies and harmonies. And I find this comes out in a lot of jazz music. And so I find that that is a huge influence throughout all of my music. But I also listen to a lot of global music, so I feel like that's come in. So it's this sort of, I guess, fusion of my melody, which is deep inside me, with all of the global musical influences that I have. So I often find it very hard to actually describe my music because I love so many different genres. So yeah, I've gone with the genre blending description for now, because there are just so many influences that it's hard to actually pinpoint my actual music. So solace, to me, signifies this sort of new light. And I find that throughout each song, it's this exploration of self and my relationship to power. And what I wanted to do was to evoke this feeling of a new chapter, of new light to the listener, and evoke these feelings of hope. So to me, that's what solace is really about. It's a meditation on power and how that interacts with language revivalism, because, I mean, I'm making music in Welsh language, and there's a history behind that, there's a politics behind that, and so I never shy away from speaking about that and the fact that language is inherently political, and due to language eradication policies that have happened historically, I think that that influences my lyrics. So I'm always wanting to highlight that, and the fact that, yeah, I'm making music in Welsh now, and that's like a sort of new thing. It's coming to light, it's coming to people's ears, and yeah, that's what solace means to me. I feel like growing up in North Wales, so I grew up in the Wrexham area, Wrexham Llangollen, and so that means it's a border town, and so you kind of constantly feel like you're dancing on a border, especially when it comes to language. I was speaking both English and Welsh, and so that has informed the way I even speak Welsh and English. And this interacts with my music too, because I don't necessarily feel like I fit into one language and therefore one type of music. So North Wales to me, because I grew up on the border, my language and my music is sort of teetering on the border always, between sounds, between textures, and between languages. Winning the Triskel Award was really, really cool, because I got to perform at the Wales Millennium Centre, which was really nice, and I feel that it gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me confidence to really pursue a new project, and also to collaborate with different artists. I feel that I'm constantly inspired by Welsh artists and artists outside of Wales, and so that was a sort of a boost of confidence for me, and that's why I'm in everyone's DMs and just emailing everybody to just collaborate, because I feel that that is the source of community that I need to be able to create. receiving the Horizon support is really cool because I'm working on a new project, and it just means that I have the freedom and the space to really be able to fully create the vision that I want for this new project. It means that it really means that I can take my time as well. I find the musical process very, very fulfilling, and it means I can have lots of people that inspire me around me. If my music was a landscape, I feel like it would be the ocean, like the image of like the ocean with glistening sun on it, and just people like having a nice time walking on the beach. I feel like, yeah, the natural world really inspires my music. I have a lot of water sounds on my EP, and so yeah, I just find that this the meditative nature of creating music is very inspiring to me. I feel very calm, fulfilled, and at peace, both in the process and when it's finished. So yeah, the natural world, and specifically the ocean, really inspires the type of music that I want to make. I really love the through line of melody and harmony within jazz. I find it very inspiring to see how different jazz artists, and specifically singers, will take a melody and then completely take it apart. Some of my biggest influences are Betty Carter, Ella Fitzgerald I love, and then most recently Ahmad Jamal. Oh wait, I'll say it properly. And most recently Ahmad Jamal. I love how experimental they are. They just really didn't care. They didn't care about the actual melody often, which is what I find really cool, because they just sang what was within them. They sang from the soul, and I feel like the one thing that I'm looking for when I'm listening to music or trying to create music is soul. I want to feel it. I don't care how impressive it is. I don't care about how impressive the chord progression is or the theory behind it as much, even though theory plays a cool part in music. What I'm looking for is soul, and I feel like that is what jazz gives me, and I feel like jazz informs my understanding of other types of genres like gospel, R&B. That's one of the foundations to my musical understanding. I do approach Welsh a little bit differently when I'm writing lyrics, because usually I choose Welsh lyrics that I like the sound of, actually, more than the actual content. Whereas I feel like English, for me, the narrative is more important. Whereas with Welsh, I go with the feeling of how it sounds. I think Welsh is a beautiful language. It's very poetic. English is also a little bit poetic, but less so. Less so. And yeah, I think that's the main thing that informs the way that I write in Welsh. I don't actually know what language I think in anymore. I've kind of lost track, but it's just sort of a mixture of the two. And so when I'm writing lyrics, I often write bilingually because I live my life bilingually. I don't really speak just in this purest form. I don't just speak English when I speak English. Often I'm throwing in Welsh words. When I speak Welsh, I'm throwing in English words. It's a complete fusion, and I think that informs the way that I write music. I think one of my most unforgettable gig experiences was Green Man Festival, because I was going there as a teenager, going to listen to music. I was volunteering at the festival. And so it was kind of this full circle moment, because there was a stage with Welsh artists, Welsh language artists, which I think is important, especially when festival organisers are from London and they're hosting a festival in Wales, I feel like it's important to actually recognise the local artists and the scene. So yeah, I felt very recognised, which was cool. DJing really influences my music. I love all sorts of electronic producers. Some of my inspirations include people like DJ Plead and Kaval. I feel like the focus on percussion when I DJ is really a through line throughout my music as well. If you listen to the EP, you'll just hear some like percussive textures subtly here and there. And the music that I'm working on right now is, yeah, full of drums. I just love drums, and I feel that that really speaks to my mixing and the way that I approach electronic music. One artist that I would love to collaborate with is Jill Scott. I feel like she's just a force. She's just a force musically. She has so many different influences and she's never just done one genre. I think people often just brand her as like neo soul, but I mean, listening to her music, like everything is there. It's R&B, it's gospel, there's some pop, there's like everything is in her music, and I find that very, very inspiring because I'm not trying to just do one genre with my music. I'm really just blending all of the different music that I listen to, and I feel that Jill Scott's always been about that, and she's never tried to she's never let anybody put her in a box, which is cool. So the message that I want listeners to take away from my music is really that often I feel like certain cultures and languages are underappreciated and not celebrated enough, and so there's always a story of power and domination behind that historically. And so I want to actually confront that and talk about it and ask questions of why Welsh language artists or artists from Wales are deemed unmarketable or deemed not as interesting as other artists. I find it, yeah, an interesting phenomenon. But what I want is to really just push the culture forward and actually celebrate the fact that we have this language and people are creating things in it, and we have cultural products. And so I actually want to talk about the history of why it is that we struggle to see artists, Welsh language artists, artists from Wales, outside of Wales, playing at the festivals, on the radio, in the more mainstream media industry. I feel that it's a big issue, and my music talks about it. So yeah, that's sort of what I refer to with power and identity. It's how those two, how they exist with each other. Working with certain producers in a room, certain musical collaborators, that usually men, I find that is quite hard because the music industry is just very male dominated, and I would really love to work with more female producers and music makers, and I find that they just don't get their flowers. They don't have enough recognition, and I find that is very challenging actually creating in a space that is made largely by men. And I think that, yeah, there's a lot of roadblocks that can happen. And so, yeah, that's why I'm on my musical journey of learning how to produce my own music. I think that, yeah, I'm very inspired by women artists who actually produce their own music. I think it's just the coolest thing, and yeah, it's very inspiring. If my music was a film, I feel like it would be some kind of like political documentary or something which has both a narrative but also just like a very strong message and like a clear message. And I would want it to be very like confrontational. I think that's the kind of music I like in terms of lyrics. I like it to be quite confrontational often. I don't know directors like that, but it would be someone that does very like nice cinematography. I feel like the phrase "kuch" would, yeah, would align with my music because I want listeners to feel a message of hope, and for it to feel almost like a hug, like a warm hug, and for it to be like soulful and yeah, full of that kind of energy. So I feel like "kuch" would be the perfect one for that one.